Hey guys, what's up? It is week 456. I have a handful of reviews for you, a tiny update. Let's just jump right into it. The first one up is a classic from 1973, Michael Crichton movie here. This is Michael Crichton was a writer. He had some obviously very popular books and would go on to, write stuff like, Coma, Jurassic Park, Congo. But his directorial debut was Westworld from 1973. This is the Arrow 4K here. This is a fantastic movie with Richard Benjamin, James Brolin, Yul Brynner, Dick Van Patten. Those are kind of the main cast members here. And I would say really there's only kind of like three big kind of actors in the film. So yeah, this movie, I know this probably doesn't really pertain to the movie, but this was one that my father liked. It would be on TV. He'd make comments. Oh yeah, this one's pretty good. And the sequel, not so much. Future World. But I don't think I've ever seen the full sequel. But Westworld here, this is way ahead of its time. And it's very much like Jurassic Park. It's kind of the same story here, Instead of dinosaurs, we have what they basically this company has created robots. These kind of high functioning robots for an amusement park, and you can go to Rome World, kind of the Sword and Sorcery World, the Sword Castle World. I don't remember what they call Medieval World, I guess they'd say, or something along those lines, and Westworld. So in the very beginning, we open up with this great little kind of commercial that is made for Westworld, these worlds and stuff, and they're talking about it. It reminds me of something like that Total Recall would kind of do, lifting from. In fact, Total Recall has some similarities to Westworld, at least the film version, not so much the book version, which I hear is quite different. If it's anything as different as the Blade Runner book to the movie, it's probably quite different. But so this film here, we have the idea, right, where you go and you kind of live out your fantasy in the Westworld, and there's a nice little supplemental feature that I enjoyed. They say that guys typically, when they want to do their fantasies, they kind of revert back to children. They want to, like, oh, we're going to do this, and guys still kind of tend to collect the things that they loved most from their childhood. There's a bunch of movies behind me if you guys are listening. But so it's that kind of idea, right? The guys want to go to the Westworld, and there's a small piece where the Dick Van Patten's wife is in there, and she's going to Rome World, which is more for like the kind of, it's not Dick Van Patten's wife. It's a different character's wife, another kind of fourth character. I can't remember the actor's name, but she wants to go to Rome World, and they kind of do that whole thing where it's more of a mature sexual kind of deal. But what happens is we follow Richard Benjamin and James Brolin. James Brolin is perfectly cast as the guy who's been there a couple of times. He's a little bit more confident. He's kind of rugged, from Amityville Horror and Josh Brolin's father, of course. Great actor, The Car. But so he's a little bit more confident. Richard Benjamin went on to be a director, of course, some great movies. And he's also an actor, an interesting actor. He's not like your big masculine kind of guy. And I don't want to compare him to like other actors of the 70s that were kind of like off kilter, or like off like the kind of masculine kind of guy like Dustin Hoffman or something like that. But he's definitely not your traditional hero or heroic type, but he's very good, and he's good in this film as well. Oh, so he directed that really bizarre movie. My favorite Alien, was it the one with Dan Aykroyd? And just a weird film. I can't remember that title. But I don't know if that was the title or not. But my stepmom, I think it was my stepmom. Whatever, I can't remember. It was one of those oddball kind of titles that they had there. But so they go into, and everything, Westworld, and everything seems fine at first. But Yul Brynner is kind of the main antagonist there, and he's insulting them. Yul Brynner, perfectly cast from being in stuff like The Magnificent Seven, where he's this kind of quiet gunslinger. But he plays a heroic type in that one, but it fits perfectly as this kind of in black, scary kind of a character that they got on the film. But of course something goes wrong, right? Something malfunctions, and at first it starts to happen really slowly, and they're cutting to Rome World and the medieval world and going back and forth, but the main focus is Westworld. And shit definitely hits the fans, where there's also this element of the robot prostitution, which reminds me of something that we're still talking about in films today, like Black Eyed Susan, right? The idea that people are making sex dolls, these robotic realistic sex dolls, so they can beat the crap out of them and other things. Just like dark, disturbing stuff here, where you have the sex dolls, and Ex Machina touches on the same subject. But this is just like briefly touched on. This also is very much a precursor to The Terminator, with Yul Brynner kind of walking as that kind of, and even Michael Myers, which is, the commentary points out that John Carpenter definitely had some inspiration from Westworld. Being such a huge fan of Westerns, there's no doubt that John Carpenter there's no doubt that he's seen this movie and probably enjoyed it for the most part. But they mentioned that in the commentary as well. Overall, Westworld does have these moments of like violence, and it does take a turn. One of the characters dies that you don't really expect at the time, and you're with another character that you really didn't expect to fill the shoes. And I thought that was just a nice touch, and it causes a lot of danger, and that whole kind of switch over is really cool. The special features on here, there's a handful of them, of course. We have brand new 4K restoration, original negative. We have Dolby Vision, original restored lossless 4-channel stereo, 2 stereo, 1 mono stereo, optional remix 5.1 DTH S as well. Optional English subtitles, brand new commentary by filmmaker and film historian Daniel Creamer. This is a good one. He points out the Carpenter stuff, and he says a lot of good stuff about Michael Crichton kind of outsmarting, the producer who is basically going to hack his movie to pieces, but he only shot kind of what you had to use and stuff like that. So Michael Crichton, even before this is his first film, a directed film, he was smart about it. Cowboy Dreams, a newly filmed conversation between actor Richard Benjamin and producer screenwriter Larry Karaszewski. That's great. Richard Benjamin seems like a genuinely sweet guy. Kept his wits about him, good interaction and whatnot. And they talk a lot about Michael Crichton as a director too. At Home on the Range, a brand new video interview with actor James Brolin, and Brolin's a great guy too. You can tell at least from the interview, seems like a genuinely interesting guy. And they both talk about their experiences making the movie, and they both seem to enjoy it. And have good stories about it as well. Hollywood producing Westworld, a brand new video interview with producer Paul and Lazarus the third. This is pretty long, so this is I think roughly like 30 minutes. Sex, Death, and Androids, a brand new appreciation the film behind the scenes look of the making of film from 73. Beyond Westworld, this 48-minute pilot episode in 1980 follow-up television series, which is interesting because we had this new series that came out not too long ago. So obviously people understood that Westworld was ahead of its time and an interesting concept and a great concept that you can do multiple things with. Reversible sleeve featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Eric Roper, collector's perfect bound booklet featuring new writings on the film by David Michael Brown, Priscilla Page, Paul Anthony Nelson, and Abby Bender. Double-sided fold-out poster featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Eric Roper, 6 postcards sized art cards. So we'll check those out in a bit when you see it in the video. But yeah, nice slipcover on here. Great movie. Highly recommended for people that like science fiction, but also kind of horror. Science fiction gone wrong, but it has horror elements. I would call it somewhat more science fiction than horror, but it does have those elements, and it's a perfect 70s kind of sci-fi flick. There's not that many kind of these, like, there's a lot of 70s sci-fi flicks, but when you think 70s, you don't think sci-fi, but they have their handful, and they have a handful of them, and this is one of the best ones. I love Westworld. Great stuff. Looks fantastic, too, and there's a lot of good stuff to look at, too. Okay, the next one here is American Yakuza, starring Viggo Mortensen, who's a classic actor here. Also has some pretty known Japanese, actors. I don't want to mispronounce their name, but Ryo Ishibashi, and then also has Michael Nori in here. There's Nicky Katz in here, not credited. Frankie AJ. I'm not very sure how to say this actor's name, but he's in a million things. And Robert Forster also has a nice little role in here. So American Yakuza was one that I did not see. It came out in the 90s. It definitely, when I was watching this, I was like, this is totally a movie that would play on HBO, that you catch on HBO. So Toei produced this, which is really wild because Toei had the V Cinema in the 90s, and Arrow put out a box set to kind of get people introduced, kind of just like a nice little box set to kind of brush up on it and stuff. And V Cinema is some of the craziest, wildest stuff happening. Like, I can't think of exactly when. It would be like the late 80s or stuff, and there's a lot of horror films from V Cinema. They're just fucking wild, crazy movies, and a lot of other companies kind of caught on and did a lot of weird stuff as well. And I think those are probably more of the horror movies. Toei was doing something, but so they had a lot of crime films, and the what was the woman XX Hunter woman stuff like that. All that kind of stuff would be like V Cinema. So they kind of wanted to branch out according to the back of this, and I find very interesting. So they wanted to do an American Yakuza film. So this is definitely like a merging of two. It's the same genre in the country. Like, you have the Japanese Yakuza films, and then you have the American Mafia films. So they were like, oh, let's just take kind of the bare minimum of kind of like generic plot points of both of these stories and mix them kind of together. So the movie does almost seem like a parody at times, or like satire nowadays and in today's eyes. So you're like watching it and you're like, oh, that definitely would happen. Oh, these definitely going to happen here and there and all this kind of stuff like that. So it feels like almost like a Tim and Eric skit. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just a kind of oddity, like mixture thing. So it's like, they can't go 100% Yakuza, 100% Mafia, and they don't want to let people that are interested in one or the other like get disappointed. pointed, so it's hitting all these beats that you expect in the storyline, right? Undercover cops, all that kind of stuff like that. Angry Italian mafioso. Michael Nouri plays the mob leader. He's pretty good in it. I knew Michael Nouri from stuff like Hologram Man and The Hidden. Of course, he's in Flashdance, but I knew Michael Nouri from probably his B movies. I always thought he was a decent actor. Viggo Mortensen, this is after stuff like Texas Chainsaw 3 and Reflecting Skin, so it's kind of an odd time for Viggo Mortensen. He had done Young Guns 2 by then, but he's definitely said he was looking for work, and he thought the movie sounded pretty decent, pretty interesting. It's incredibly stylized. In the very beginning, you're like, this is really stylized, really fun, it's a very enjoyable movie. They have great shootouts and everything like that, but it's just this weird mixture of genres that you don't ever think would necessarily work, but overall, the movie really does work. The main loyalty here is, Viggo Mortensen, you think is just this kind of ex-con that's working in a factory, and one day these guys try to make this hit on this famous Yakuza, and Viggo Mortensen gets involved and ends up saving this one kind of head, kind of honcho in the Yakuza, this kind of, I always call him a pit boss, but like a mid-level boss, and he ends up saving him, and he earns their loyalty in that aspect, and they kind of eventually bring him in the Yakuza, but then there's this like twist halfway through, which I don't want to even spoil, but it's kind of obvious. He's not in the movie, but like it is kind of going to go here, and it's a big plot point in the movie where he is undercover cop. So there's like a spoiler here, and that's this whole kind of element here where he's so far in, right? He doesn't want to get out of the whole thing, and it's Donnie Brasco, right? You don't want to. You're almost so invested in this that you start to side with the Yakuza and befriend the Yakuza and become great close friends with them, and it's a thing of loyalty and whatnot. They take the smashing of the cups, like that Blood Brothers oath that happens so much in a lot of these old 70s Yakuza films and even 60s, 70s Yakuza kind of crime films, and that's in here as well. But it's a fun movie that ends in kind of like almost like a John Woo style kind of shootout, not as elaborate as something like that, but still pretty damn good. The acting is all solid, the characters are pretty solid, there's a couple funny beats in here. Overall, American Yakuza is an interesting, decent, solid movie, and it's a perfect movie that you would catch on like Showtime or HBO. And I don't mean that as an insult, because some of the favorite movies growing up, I definitely caught on that, like Surviving the Game and Night Flyer, just really fun, cool movies. The Hitcher, just cool stuff. And I feel like this kind of belongs in that element. Not as good as those. Those movies have a lot of nostalgia for me, but maybe on somewhere on that level. So as far as special features are concerned, 2K restoration for original camera negative by Toei Pictures, high definition Blu-ray, original lossless stereo audio, optional English subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing, brand new audio commentary with director Frank Cappello and director Christina Lawson. That's good. She plays kind of the love interest. She's got some good scenes in here. And, the director's pretty, candid, talking about people messaged him and told him this is their favorite movie. So, Yakuza-style newly filmed interview with director Frank Cappello, decoding honor and archive interview with actor Viggo Mortensen. That's great to hear. He talks a little bit about how he got involved. Newly filmed interview with actor Ryu Ishibashi. Original trailer, image gallery, reversible sleeve, featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Agency, collector's booklet featuring new writings on the film by Patrick, Macias. So there we go. Yeah, fun movie, nice action piece. I would check this one out if you're into kind of mob or Yakuza movies and you want to see a mixture of them. Okay, this next one here from Arrow Video as well, and this is a 4K of one of the most, it has a huge hype behind it. This movie is considered one of the most bizarre, wild, weird movies ever, and this is The Visitor, 1979. Produced by Video Asanatis, who directed some real wild movies and made some and produced some other crazy movies like Beyond the Door, Tentacles, Madhouse from 1981, which is one of my favorite kind of slasher horror films. But The Visitor, so this one, it lives in infamy, right? 1979, has an all-star cast. The cast is one of the most bizarre elements of this movie, and it really, that they're all involved in here is so weird. So going here, we have John Huston. Yes, director John Huston, also actor, Chinatown, Moby Dick, just has a great, amazing voice, great, amazing presence, good actor, bizarre performance in here, bizarre character in here. Shelley Winters, another great actress, amazing actress, another bizarre performance in this one. But, at this point in her career, I think that she was in Tentacles by Video. I think that Shelley Winters, pretty much all her roles were kind of bizarre performances, to be honest. Then we have Glenn Ford. Glenn Ford had an interesting early 80s if you're looking at horror films. 80, he had Virus, the Japanese-American co-production, which is a great film. And then in 81, he had Happy Birthday to Me, which is a really violent, Canadian giallo-style slasher. Good film. And then he has this one in 83. I'm sure I'm probably missing a couple Glenn Ford movies in there. I think he narrated like a shark documentary, which is absolutely garbage, but from memory. And this one, this is 79. So like looking where this is like the beginning of his weird 80s kind of run, right? In movies, and I'm sure he had popped in here and there. But the funniest thing about Glenn Ford in this movie is like he obviously had a cold sore or like a cut on his lip, and they like try to bot it with like makeup, and you can see it in 4K that like there's clearly something there that they're trying to cover up. I don't want to miss anybody, but Lance Henriksen has a pretty sizable role in here. This is probably after the Charlie Band movie he did, but before Piranha 2, of course, for James Cameron. And then we have Sam Peckinpah in the weirdest role ever. Peckinpah wasn't an actor. He was one of my favorite directors of all time. So this role in here is weird. He was 80 yard because he was too fucking drunk, which sounds about it's a story you would check out, I would assume. Who else pops up in here? I don't want to miss anybody, but just like I said, just off the top of my head, that's it. The lead actors in here, just a handful of movies from my memory. She's really good too, but yeah, weird film. I don't know how to talk about the fucking plot here because you listen to a lot of the commentaries and special features, and they do have some love and appreciation for it. One of them kind of dives into the exploitation. John says, the movie's kind of exploitative in a mixture of smorgasbord of these things. And then, I can't remember exactly, but what each one is kind of talking about. But they're talking about a lot of this kind of weird elements of things in the films and breaking it down. And nobody really talks about how the movie came together so much more as the people that actually were involved in it, with like the writer and Lance Henriksen, the actor, as an interview on here. But this is archival stuff from the Alamo Drafthouse old Blu-ray disc. So the interview with Lance Henriksen, his like 10 minutes kind of sums up everything, and the writer especially kind of talks about how the director Michael Paradiso had worked with what's the biggest director in Italy? Fellini. He had worked with Fellini, so he's coming off this, got the movie for that. He had worked with him on one of his movies, so they're like giving him this, and he had to be the director, and there was a lot of weird shit going on, including people being threatened. And this director was trying all these weird, wild things and arguing with the writer and just making everyone everything a living hell on the movie. Oh, did I mention Franco Nero plays some sort of Jesus-like alien character, is my understanding. But this is kind of just The Omen in a lot of ways, and The Exorcist, but in a really surreal, bizarre, weird way. So, but John Huston, he plays this kind of magical kind of character that seems to have powers, and he seems to be from another world, and he is trying to stop basically this evil corporation led by Mel Ferreira, another kind of great actor, who's the only actor who appears in both Eaten Alive movies. Yes, but he is trying to be this like evil head of corporation. So it feels a lot like, kind of like The Omen, like 2 and 3, where they would kind of go into those elements and stuff like that, even though Omen 3 was 81. So this is after Omen 2, which kind of has that element as well. But, it's going into this evil corporation that this woman has this magical womb that can produce these spiritual children that have these giant powers. And we're focusing on this little girl who is just completely menacing and evil, and she has all these magical powers. And it reminds me a lot of Beyond the Door, right? Because a video directed that, and he produces this, so there's like kids cussing and yelling and screaming, and I think maybe Ovidio probably had something to do with that kind of element in the film, because he seemed to get a kick out of little kids being ruthless to adults. But and there's a really funny scene with Glenn Ford where she just like tears into him, which is pretty funny. But she has like a magical falcon that she uses to attack people. There's a weird ice skating rink scene which is completely bonkers. There is a space scene where John Huston's just standing there working, magically connecting and doing all these star things. He has his own like kind of theme music, so when he comes into the scene, it's like it's really weird. It's almost like an action movie score, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? Everything about this movie is just off and weird, and it's 100% a smorgasbord. Like the first word is smorgasbord. It has all these elements of these movies that were very popular at the time. It does come across as, a ripoff at times, but it's also pretty well done in a lot of aspects, and it doesn't seem incredibly cheap, just incredibly bizarre. bizarre and a mixture of these like Italian movies were infamous. They were the best at ripping it off, but why are they ripping off 30, 40 movies? Because the director is so weird and wild that it seemed like the writer and the director were butting heads, and the producer. So all these people wanted these different elements into the movie. According to the writer, the script was thrown right out the fucking window, literally, not just a metaphorical thing there. But no, he just tossed the script right out the window after everything. So it's all these weird elements coming together to make one of the most bizarre movies. It's enjoyable. It has a lot of like good filmmaking aspects, right? Like cinematography and these elements. But the story is just completely batshit, and it doesn't translate. I don't hate the movie. I enjoy it, and I think that most people would enjoy this kind of oddity. At the time, Lance Henriksen obviously was very disappointed with it. People laughed at it. People hated it. And it's still just a weird kind of movie in the element that, like that. They say also encounters the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I could see that as well. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have the brand new audio commentary by critics BJ and Harmony Colangelo. I know BJ. Personally, she's a Wastelander. And this is more of a commentary. This isn't like going to dive into the history of the making of the movie, where it says anything along lines like, Glenn Ford got involved in this movie because this and that and all this kind of stuff, and the elements came together, and it's not like a Troy Howarth or like a Nathaniel Thompson, Bruce Holchek, our editor, Stephen geez, why am I losing my brain here? Any like kind of the normal like people that do a lot of these commentaries in depth and do like historian kind of style commentaries here. Stephen Thrower. It's not in that style. It's more of kind of just like sitting and relaxing and talking about the movie and what they like about the movie and why they love the movie and stuff of that nature. So then we have a Biblical Battle for Cosmos, a brand new video essay by Megan Navarro. Cosmic Right to Choose, a brand new video essay by film critic Willow McClay. And that's more about this movie being pro, abortion and right to choose, even though it has all these religious aspects as well. The Megan Navarro one talks about like the exploitation film and all these kind of elements. Archival interview with Lance Henderson, archival interview with screenwriter Lou Comici, archival interview with cinematographer Ennio Giannarneri, a theatrical trailer, image gallery, reversible sleeve featuring original newly commissioned artwork by Eric Buckham, collector's booklet featuring new writings by Mark Edward Hewitt, Richard Cadry, Craig Martin, and Mike White. So this is a wild, weird movie. It looks fantastic in 4K, so if it's up your alley and you really want to revisit The Visitor, then check it out in 4K and do it in style. There's no other movie where you'll get to see John Huston, Shelley Winters, Glenn Ford, Franco Nero, Lance Henriksen, Mel Ferreira in a movie. It's just a wild cast, a weird cast, and I don't think any of them knew what the fuck was going on. Plus, Sam Peckinpah in the weirdest role he ever did, and that includes Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which I wouldn't call those real roles. And this one, it barely feels like one either, really. But yeah, check it out. Okay, this next one here is from On Earth Films. And this is Olaf Ittenbach's Garden of Love. Now, Olaf Ittenbach should be no stranger to this channel. I'm sure I've covered a couple of his movies on here. I think I covered Permutos, which is a gore fest. I had to have covered The Burning Moon at one point. Maybe I didn't, but classic gore fest here. Olaf Ittenbach is one of the premier, if not the premier, German splatter guy, right? Him and Andrew Snash are kind of the big German splatter guys. Timo Ross, is he from Germany? But there's like a handful of them. But, Olaf Ittenbach sits right at the hierarchy. He is one of the four faces of Mount Rushmore German gore. That's a weird reference to make of a American historical site. But anyways, you guys know what I mean. A monument for America. But the Garden of Love. So here we go. This is one that I actually hadn't seen. I've seen a handful of his movies, that came out in the 2000s. This is 2003, like Beyond the Limits and things of that nature. So Olaf Ittenbach, I like his early stuff a lot, like Black Past and Premurdos and Burning Moon. Those are all really great films. Some of his later stuff I'm okay with, like Dark Divorce. And I put this one as an okay too. The gore is fantastic. So first and foremost, most people are going to come here and for an Olaf Ittenbach movie, they're looking for gore, and he always delivers in that aspect. He doesn't, wimp out on that kind of. So this movie opens up with a massacre of like 11 people, all of them killed in brutal, nasty fashion, and only the way that Olaf could do. Really good effects, really kind of some creative deaths as well. And we kind of fast forward, and this girl is starting to get these kind of weird visions. She's seeing this character who was actually killed at this place. He was like a kind of a famous singer, had was really big hit Garden of Love, and he had like kind of a cult kind of family and element like that of that nature. But she's starting to see visions of him like on television talking to her, and he's very much like a Cenobite like character, although he's like a ghost. He's like, you must bring them to me. It's very Cenobite like, and this script is 100%. If the Weinsteins had this script in the late 90s, early 2000s, this would have ended up a Hellraiser sequel. That's the kind of vibe that's going on here. One of those like movies that's didn't start as a Hellraiser movie, but somehow ended up as a Hellraiser movie, like Inferno, Hellseeker, Deader, Hellworld, any of those ones, those four kind of Hellraiser style things. But it's kind of in that vein. So the cinematography and stuff like that, the camera tricks, the in-camera tricks, there's a lot of fun stuff to be had. Like the couple of people are walking up the house, the camera pulls back, and they hear something and look over, and the camera never cuts. There's a oneer right in the very beginning that's pretty impressive. So on a low budget, Olaf's doing like impressive things with the camera, the cutting, the editing, all that kind of stuff. I think works pretty well for a low budget movie. The one issue is, and he's not the only guy that has this problem. I think any movies that kind of came out during this time have this issue if they're foreign films and they speak English. So the cast is probably international cast, but they're all speaking English, so they're not speaking their first languages. So some actors come across really terrible. I don't know if they were forced to say the dialogue exactly written on the page because it doesn't come off their tongues right. It comes across odd, or if they were given line readings, whatnot. But regardless, the acting suffers majorly from the accents or the way the lines are delivered. They just don't. It just does not work for the most part. Every once in a while, there'll be a scene that's really good, like a long, like monologue of a character, kind of like when the guy's talking about the crime scene. That's really good. But before that, his acting's not great either. I don't know how much is ADR'd. I don't know how many issues come from that. But again, you're not watching this movie 100% for the acting. The story's not bad. The story's kind of fun. Of course, this girl there's a mystery about her. She's that one kind of lone factor that's going to connect this massacre and these people kind of bugging her, and it's going to tie back into her childhood. All this kind of stuff like that. And I don't want to necessarily spoil that. You might get some kicks out of it. But I like the ghost motivation here. Anyone you bring to this house, we kill. Bring the one who did this. Remember Hellraiser 1, we want who did this, right? And that kind of element in that aspect. So they want their revenge, but they can't leave the house. So they're kind of like we are still here or something like that. They're stranded in that house. So that's kind of what happens here, and there's one giant massacre with a bunch of police officers that goes on forever, and that's exactly what you want when you're watching this. A lot of gore, a lot of people being killed. The movie just stops to a standstill for like a 10-minute gore scene. You're like, worth it. The reveal it's pretty obvious where it's going in that aspect. But overall, if you're looking for gore, look no further than Garden of Love. I like the idea that he had this hit, and this song will play as well, like kind of this element in the kind of house. You'll hear the Garden of Love like one hit, like kind of wonder thing playing, and you're like, oh shit, that's quite terrifying. But as far as the special features, we have a making of Garden of Love, a look behind Garden of Love, new outtakes, new photo gallery, that stuff. It looks like the new outtakes, new photo gallery were added, but the other stuff looks like vintage stuff, probably from an old DVD release. I don't know if this ever had a US DVD release, so you got to be careful with a lot of the German stuff because a lot of it was cut. You'd always have to import these special ones from like usually a Scandinavian country to get the uncut stuff. There was like that Nuja films from like Sweden, all those companies like that, or the Scandinavian areas, where I used to have people help me get these movies like Beyond the Limits and Pure Mutos before like Massacre would put that stuff out. So I used to collect a lot of those gore films and German splatter films, and a lot of other companies around the world would put them out. So it's nice that On Earth is putting out some Olaf movies and whatnot. That's really cool stuff, and Massacre's put out some Andros Snas movies, and Cinefs has put out violent shit. So we're getting a lot of the German splatter movies. How many of Olaf's movies have been released now? I know he's probably has a dozen movies I don't even know about, but it looked good. It sounded good, and you know what? It actually does look pretty good. I just shot on film. For as far as I could tell, it's 100% shot on film. But there's some really good imagery if you look there. That's a great shot. So, I mean, like, this is a lot of style. There's only the one hang-up, and it's a real hang-up. And a lot of the Italian movies that came out around that time had the same issue. It's just the acting, but it's mostly hurt because of the dialogue through the language barrier. I would pretty much guarantee that, but that's the kind of issues I had with it. But besides that, I don't really have any issues. If you're looking for gore, then Garden of Love has a decent story and massive, nasty, gory special effects. Okay, I'll be brief with this one, but we're going to talk about 28 years later, Bone Temple. I had like 2 or 3 people say, hey, Dave, I know you didn't like 28 years later, but I think you'd like Bone Temple a little bit more. So I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. Went to theaters to see it. Directed by the the lady who did Candyman, the new Candyman, which I didn't hate. A lot of people didn't like it. I just felt like the movie, the last act wasn't great, and I feel like there was 15 minutes cut. But I did enjoy the movie for the most part. I know I am probably a minority in that aspect. But this one here, 28 years later, Bone Temple. So, yeah, we kind of continue the story here, right, in the end of the first movie, which I do not like, and I don't want to get into it. You watch a review. So we have our lead character here, Spike, who's kind of like run from his home, and he's kind of stranded on this island, of course. And the UK's been isolated forever, and they still have these people still going through the whole infected kind of element here. But he ends up running into these guys called Jimmy that they're basically were frozen in time. They worshipped this kind of, they were young kids that survived, and they loved Teletubbies, and they watched this Jimmy kind of character who ended up, it's really twisted in real life who the character was and whatnot. And they all dress like Jimmy, and the leader is the bad guy from Sinners, the vampire-like character, and he's great in this, and he's Jimmy Crystal, and everybody is Jimmy so-and-so, Jimmy Joe. So he's stuck in this cult where people have to wear wigs. The girls are Jimmy. Everybody's Jimmy. Everybody's Jimmy. And Ralph Fiennes is still doing his Bone Temple thing where he's taking these skulls and making this shrine to the dead, to the lost, infected, the lost people of the planet. And he's kind of living his life, right? And we have that alpha kind of zombie character continuing. And there's going to be this relationship between Ralph Fiennes and this alpha, and maybe possibly a next step in evolution or a possible change in these kind of infected or certain kinds of infected, which some people may find interested, some people may find it kind of stupid overall, but so it's like people said it's kind of in the Day of the Dead fashion, and I can see that to a certain extent and a certain element. But Ralph Fiennes is much more level-headed seemingly than Dr. Logan was at that point. But so we kind of follow these characters around. This gang of Jimmys where Spike's trying to survive, and they're kind of chasing these other characters, trying to kill them, and it gets incredibly violent. In fact, a lot of the Jimmys are fantastic characters, and a couple of them bite it, I think, a little too soon. Some of the ones that you'd like to see stick around, but incredibly violent, gory movie, which, and this movie tonally stays in tone. Like the 28 years later was all over the place, and my issue wasn't with the cult at the end. It was just how they were portrayed in the movie made it seem like it was like a Shaw Brothers comedy or something at the very end of the movie, and it just really didn't fit. And I don't have a problem with how, certain movies have that tone. Like Hong Kong has its own tone where there'll be comedy elements, or Troma has its own tone, but it stays within that whole tone throughout the movie where you expect these things to happen. And 28 years later just felt deadly serious at times, but then the script points were so stupid, and it bothered me. This is tonally kind of pretty much the same tone across, which I could appreciate. My only issue with this movie was the pacing. I had pacing issues where the movie seemed to come to a complete standstill, and there's just these dialogue scenes, which I normally don't have a problem with, but I feel like there were scenes where characters were alone or talking to someone where I felt like I was checked out. I was just like, this is going on too long. It's just not as interesting as they think it is, but that's just personally me, probably. Overall, I think this is a pretty good movie with great special effects and great gore and some kind of violent moments, more violent than some people may expect. But I would recommend checking out 28 Years Later, Bone Temple. I liked it. I didn't love it. On revisit, I might like it a little bit more. I could see this one definitely going up. But this director's 2 for 2 for me. And they're not perfect movies, but they're interesting movies. And I think that the stuff that works in them does work really well. So check this one out if you get a chance. All right, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
Guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel.
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
Okay, this is a rewatch here. This is Panic Beats, directed by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Paul Naschy. He also directed The Beast with the Magic Sword, one of the Daninsky werewolf films this year. So this is kind of the late end of the kind of Spanish horse cycle from this time. You know, at this point, General Franco, Dictator Franco, was dead. So, you know, they kind of opened the floodgates, right? Hell, Severn put out a whole box set dedicated to that stuff. They opened the floodgates for people to not have to worry about what they were putting out. So, you know, Naschy kind of making his movies, like fighting the censors and making these kind of gothic horror films with a little nudity, maybe for, you know, the world market, international market. He was out there making these movies, so he had a little bit more, you know, I guess demand, which is weird. But when everyone started doing it, putting a lot of sex in their films, Naschy's movies became less popular, and his movies always had this element of throwback, like the gothic kind of classic Hammer movies, but with more violence and gore. So, like, they're not really making these films like that anymore. So Panic Beats is a little odd for, you know, Naschy. I don't know, but Naschy was a little bit more versatile in his filmmaking and acting than a lot of people probably think he was. I think, as far as what I've seen, at least, you know, when you look at the Frenchman's Garden and stuff like that. But so as an actor, this one, it's kind of a. What we have here is, the opening is amazing. We have this character in this knight outfit chasing this naked woman through the woods, and he murders her horribly. It's violent. It's very much atmospheric. It's got a lot of, you know, style and everything like that. And we kind of come to modern times, and Paul Naschy is this businessman who's married to a sickly woman. The actress is in a bunch of his movies. So it's kind of like a reunion. They've been in movies together as well. Naschy plays the knight in the beginning, as well as this character that's direct lineage from this knight. Very Naschy, like to do that, multiple characters in his films, as he always did. But Naschy, so he's this business guy, his wife is sickly, and he's like, listen, let's move back and I'll take you out to this area. It's supposed to be sunnier, better for you. You have this ailment that's eventually going to kill you, but I'll take you out here and we can have the best quality of life for you, right? This is my old family home. My maid's still there, who's another actress, Lola Gallos. She's in a bunch of stuff and very recognizable. She's good in this as well. So those are like kind of the three of the four main characters. So they go back to this old house, and the maid has her daughter there, and the woman immediately starts having horrible things happen to her. She almost gets raped and attacked by a couple of bandits that Naschy fights off, and weird things start to happen where she's haunted. She's told the story of the knight, his ancestor who murdered his wife and then a bunch of their children. So that's stuck in her head, and there's these constant things that are happening. But it turns out it's kind of a gaslighting story here, and I don't want to spoil everything, but it's very dark and kind of sad and whatnot. So it's like just just kind of a disturbing element, right? And the commentary, the guys from the Naschy cast, great commentary. They talk about how Naschy, in this point in his life, was very, down on everything, and he was very much pessimistic, and his movies end on a sad note. And they say this movie is like a dark, kind of dark look at humanity, but at the same time, it's not too dark that you can't enjoy it. And, there's a lot of things that kind of slower and manipulation and whatnot and gaslighting, but then when we get to the final act of the movie, it gets incredibly violent. And one of the characters has like this reveal background where it's like, yeah, she was a drug addict and stuff. You're like, oh shit. There's a lot of double crossing and violence, and it ends up being a pretty damn cool movie with a really great opening and a really great ending and cool stylized music. And it's not Naschy's best, but it's a good one. And for 83, it's a solid Spanish horror film, which I do enjoy. Directed by Naschy himself. As far as the features, we have a brand new 4K transfer, 2 interviews with Paul Naschy, audio commentary from the Naschy cast, Troy Gwynn and Rod Barnett. Great stuff. Always love their commentary and love their podcast. I'd recommend this. If you're a Naschy fan, if you're a Spanish horror fan, if you're a Euro horror fan, this one will definitely be up your alley. That is Panic Beats from 1983. Good stuff. Okay, this next one here from 83 is from the All Haunts BR's box set, the first volume. This is Eyes of Fire from 83. I definitely have a VHS. I don't know if I'll be able to grab it. It was one of those VHS that was there forever. It's back up there. I'll show it in the video. But yeah, this bad boy has so many good folk horror movies in here. I'm not going to show you everything. You'll see it in the video down here. But, so Eyes of Fire was one that I did see before this set was coming out. And I remember enjoying it. It's got a great cover art. It's a very memorable cover art. It was one of those movies that people always like, release Eyes of Fire on DVD or Blu-ray for years and years and years. And this is an odd one. This is like a movie that has like, it feels like it wouldn't be made in America. It's an odd title to be released in America. Director is, I think, Avery Crounse. But yeah, so here's the story. It definitely takes place in the 1750s, if I'm mistake. So this is there is a group of kind of a family unit somewhat, where this woman is, she's still married. Her husband's like a trapper mountain kind of guy. And he's out and about, and they're kind of separated, but she's been sleeping with this religious figure who's very manipulative kind of character, where he's said to have special powers, and he has this young girl that he's also like said he saved from this fire, and he's been sleeping with this wife, and the townsfolk get upset with it, and they decide, we're just going to kill all these people and burn them to death. And luckily, they do manage to get out of there through some magical powers as well. The memorable kind of actor within this group is the grandfather from Silent Night, Deadly Night is one of the guys in here. He's got some great scenes in here, although they're not very long. But so they end up escaping and stealing this boat, this little raft, this kind of and whatnot. And they're traveling down the river, and they're attacked by Shawnee Indians, and they end up being in French Shawnee territory. And they start to survive. They end up going in this valley, but there's something wrong with this valley. And the father comes looking for them, for his daughter and whatnot, because there's a bunch of kids in this party as well, and he wants to make sure his daughter's safe. And the way he explains it, he says, a lot of people believe when you kill something innocent, all this innocent blood kind of leaks down in this valley, and it creates some sort of spirit. And that's kind of what he sums up. But it's kind of this witch of the woods is bizarre, and it seems to have a hold over the people that have died in here, and it has like their souls in this like tree element. So it's got this weird whole like pagan belief with the trees and everything like that, and their souls and the faces in the trees. So really great, kind of great stuff, and visually there's amazing creepy stuff going on, tons of atmosphere. And this whole group of people end up being trapped, and we have that like religious figure, and it comes to light that maybe somebody else has more powers than him, and there's kind of a battle of magic here, and it's not obvious the first time you watch this movie, but it becomes a little bit more obvious kind of what's going on if you see it more than once. But overall, this movie's got some great set pieces, some beautiful imagery, some wild, weird folk horror stuff going on that I think is great, some good characters as well. And overall, I think that Eyes of Fire is a great movie. It's got the narration, which I enjoyed, and I like the narration because the narration switches halfway through, right? Where you have like one character who's comatose, and she was doing a narration, like what the hell's going on, and then boom, somebody else starts talking, one of the little girls, and I thought that was an interesting kind of take on it. There's 2 versions on here. The original is like 125. It's pretty fast paced. Mike Genovese is in the beginning, as a French kind of soldier who finds them, and then the other one is a longer version, like Crying Blue Skies, which is a great line within here. The cold eyes and getting the hot fire. That whole speech is really great stuff, especially during someone's like slowly dying. But So like that version is longer and it has a little bit more to it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the bookends are a little bit different as well. I feel like I didn't remember seeing like the same bookends, different endings, kind of whatnot. But overall, I think this is a really fun, different, unique movie. It's not like super fun, but it's super interesting. I wouldn't say it's like fun, but it's just really cool. It's fun for me to watch some of the visuals and the way the folklore is kind of done, and it has a really iconic kind of witch in here. Very recommended for people that are into the weird folk horror. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have a commentary, and I don't think the commentary is like absolutely fantastic. It's not like kind of breaking up like all this kind of elements like that and talking about things of like, you know, who made this, how it got made. It's more so in kind of just talking a lot about the Native American history and stuff of that nature. So if you're interested in that, you might enjoy it. And there's also an interview with Stephen Thrower and the director, which is great. He talks a little bit about, you know, how this movie came to be and all that kind of stuff like that, which is great. Stephen Thrower loves these kind of, you know, different kind of American horror films. What was that book he had, American Horror Project, which is, you know, Arrow put out some movies from that book and stuff. Really cool stuff. But yeah, good movie. Eyes of Fire. I would recommend checking this one out from '83. It might be, you know, if you haven't seen it, this one might be one that you might really love. Okay, the next one here is called The House, and this is an Icelandic horror film from Iceland. Really crazy. I don't know if I've covered any from Iceland from the 80s just yet, but this shares a lot of DNA with the 1982 horror film from Dominic Graf called Second Sight, which is a German kind of horror film. And much like, you know, the early 80s, 83 has a lot of the same kind of premonition, kind of psychic vibes going on. That was very big in the 70s, like not Let's Scare Judge. What's the other one? The Haunting of Giulia, or even anything like The Psychic, Fulci's a Psychic. There's so much of that going on, right, where you have that minor psychic ability. But in the early 80s, there was tons of it, right? There's tons of them going on. And in 82, I was just like, man, there's so many of these premonition kind of characters, second sight characters, reincarnation characters, all these people that have these special feelings. And Shining is another big one that came out in 1980. So that's a very popular thing. But this one, you know, is kind of disguised as like a haunted house movie, right? Where we have this couple who's struggling to find a place to live, and they have to live with the girl's aunt, and she's very strict, and they're not happy, so they search and search and search, and they end up finding this house. It seems to be perfect, of course, but it's not going to be perfect, because almost immediately she starts to have these weird visions of people within the house. She's hearing a lot of noises, and the husband's a musician, so, you know, husband being a musician, so she thinks maybe it's that aspect, always being loud, but it's not. There's just other things going on as well, and, you know, she teaches deaf kids, so there's, like, they definitely point that out in, like, the description. They're like, the different, you know, back and forth of that, but it's just like, it's there, but it's not necessarily there. But as she starts to dig deeper, she becomes obsessed with these people that she's seeing in the house, and she ends up finding this old photo album of her aunts, and the people that she's seeing in the house are in the photo album. She starts putting two to two together, and, you know, there are people trying to cover everything up, and it's definitely a psychic kind of style story, right, where your premonitions are going to lead to one thing, and maybe damn you, right? This kind of element like that, and Don't Look Now is another one like that, and this has that kind of element, you know, that kind of film that doesn't necessarily feel 100% like a horror film. Maybe like it's like, oh, House of Psychotic Woman, this woman is mentally ill, but the reality is that she has some second sight that a lot of people don't have, and, you know, The Shining or of that nature, and it's definitely in that aspect. It's well shot, it's well made, it's well acted, there's no real complaints to it. It is a subtle horror film, though. It's not heavy in the horror. It's a horror film, but it's more subtle and tragic and just kind of depressing. But I would recommend checking out The House. It's an Icelandic horror film. Love the lead actress. I think she does a fantastic job in it too. She was in a handful of movies, but you know, she's really good in this one, and not too many movies, mostly Icelandic horror films, not horror films. But yeah, check this one out, The House. I've not heard many people talk about it, but I would give it a slight recommend. I liked it. Okay, the next one here is a 1983 Canadian television flick here, and I don't know if I'd call this one necessarily an animals attack movie, but it definitely is advertised as one, and it is an animal attacks movie. It's an animal attack movie, survival criminal kind of movie here. So there's like this mad bear going around killing people. In the very beginning, we have two hunters killed in fairly decent, brutal fashion. I believe this is a TV movie, as far as TV fashion can go, right? So they're killed, and we have this couple that meet up, and they've been Brighton people pen pals back and forth forever. They known each other for years. They haven't seen each other in years, and I guess they finally took the dive to finally meet up and have a relationship finally after all these years. I think something happened where one of them got divorced. So they meet up, and their idea, she's kind of more of a outdoorsy type, kind of tough type, and he's a writer. So yeah, he's not going to be very tough, according to movie logic. So they end up going out to this cabin that they have, and they're going to hang out for the weekend and have fun in this wintry coldness. At the same time, this bear is out there running amok, and one of their family friends, one of her like dad's family friends or something like that, is really kind of outdoorsy kind of guy, and he doesn't get a chance to warn them before they go. So he does eventually show up again. He's popping in and out, but at the same time as that, we have these these criminals that escaped, and they're running around the woods, and they get the idea that, let's kill this bear, collect the prize money and whatnot, and then make our way out of here. And they're like, just bumbling kind of idiots, the one big dumb one and the one smaller mean one, and they're going to have their run-in with this kind of new couple and a bunch of other peoples, and the bear's going to be involved. There's a really incredibly stupid scene where this lady has already had a bear attack on her. She's like guarding this kid, and she ends up like just seeing some rustling in the woods, and she's like, it's the bear again. So she completely runs and jumps off a cliff, and you're like, that was fucking stupid. I don't know what the fuck's going on here, but don't jump off the cliff unless you got to. I mean, let's get the bear a little closer before you just dive off the fucking cliff. But it's just like, what? Overall, this is okay. It's not amazing. It's not the worst movie ever made, but it's not really a hearty recommend or anything. It's pretty forgettable. This is called Beast. And so many movies with that title, The Beast, Savage Beast. It's just called Beast, and obviously not to be confused with the 1980 movie The Beast, which is a great kind of rape revenge Hong Kong film, which I would highly recommend. This one is just Beast. And I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't say it's horrible, but hey, you could do better. You could do better in TV movies too. I don't know about in '83. Let me think. But we'll find out at the end in my big video essay at the very, very end of this whole ordeal. But yeah, Beast, not great, not horrible. It's very forgettable, tedious. Okay, the Patreon pick here is Breaking Away. That is right. Directed by Peter Yates, who did he did Outland, which is a great movie. Fucking forget Murphy's War. He did a lot of films, and I've seen a handful of them, and he always does a good job. Kind of an underrated director. Friends of Eddie Coyle, great movie. So it's like he's done a bunch of great movies. Really solid director. And Breaking Away was one that I heard about for years, probably by Brian Sauer originally. I'd heard the title, but just hearing on his podcast, Pure Cinema, great podcast. But he this is one of his favorites, I believe. Somebody picked this as a Patreon pick, and I was very happy to watch it. So directed by Peter Yates, starring Dennis Christopher, from Fade to Black and Django and Django Unchained. But great actor and perfect at becoming someone who's obsessed with something in a movie. He just has this really great energy about him to do that. And this is much lighter than Fade to Black, but he has that same wild obsession and drive that he had in Fade to Black, but just something much more lighter. And the movie's much more lighter and wholesome than Fade to Black. But then we also have Dennis Quaid playing a small town guy who just is going to be the best thing in that small town. He's got a great speech, a great moment in here too. Daniel Stern, one of my favorites, love Daniel Stern, great. And Jackie Haley, great role for him as well. And then we also have Paul Dooley. Gotta love Paul Dooley. We have the asshole from Die Hard playing another kind of asshole. Perfect casting. And I can't think of the wife's name of Paul Dooley's wife, who, they're both Dennis Christopher's parents. Also a great performance on her end. But yeah, this is a really good film that takes place in like Bloomington area here. Bloomington is like a college kind of town, kind of a little liberal town in the middle of Indiana. Bloomington was where Scott Shermer was from, or around there. The indie director. That's why I know Bloomington and been there a couple times, and it was kind of cool place. Made some movies there. But Bloomington, yeah, so it was kind of crazy to see, this takes place in Bloomington, cool. But, yeah, so we have the small group of, locals that are, destined to stay there forever, and they call them the Cutters. The college kids call them the Cutters. And Dennis Christopher and his 4 friends that I named earlier, 3 friends with him, there's 4 of them, named earlier, are Cutters. They're considered Cutters, and, this college, whatnot. So they don't really know what they want to do. Dennis Christopher is obsessed with biking. He's obsessed with Italy because of the biking and everything, and he's always running around the house speaking in Italian. And Paul Dooley is this, car salesman that used to cut all this kind of, like, not necessarily what they cut is like limestone or something like that, like this hard-ass job that he did for years. So, he has this, like, masculine idea of what a guy should do, work for a living. You don't need to go to college. You don't need a bike ride. You need a job. Your standard kind of 80s, 70s, 80s father. Paul Dooley's a fantastic actor. What was the one he was, the dad in the John Hughes movie? This is what happens. 16 Candles. Love him in that. I believe, 16 Candles. And he's also great in, was he the dad in Pretty Big? I can't remember. Paul Dooley plays a dad in one of the John Hughes movies, and I remember him kicking ass in it. He's also in, A Little Shop of Horrors. You can't copyright a vegetable. And he's in, the movie I watched not too long ago, O.C. and Stiggs, and a great performance. But Paul Dooley, underrated actor. Always really good, and this is one of my favorite performances he did that I've seen. Probably his best performance that I've seen. I mean, Dennis Christopher's fantastic, but the relationship between the father and son is really kind of the main point in this movie, I think, that really sticks with me. And there's a great scene where, they're always constantly fighting. He's always bitching about him, and that's just like a relationship that a father and son actually does have. But at the end of the day, through like his will and what he does and coming around, he definitely, there's a bond that happens between them. It's really touching. There's a couple, watching this movie for the first half, I was like, this is a good, solid movie, drama movie, but the second half kind of brought it up to the point where I was like, oh no, man, there's a couple really strong scenes in here that I thought were really powerful. One is with Paul Dooley and Dennis Christopher, and another was there's a couple more, but there's one with the girl that Dennis Christopher becomes obsessed with, that he's trying to lie and kind of manipulate by acting Italian, and she does this big speech on him, and that also works really well. But I love this thing that Dennis Quaid says, and this is such a good character that he plays in here, where he says, all these college kids will always stay the same age, and I'll always get older. I'll never be that guy. And you're just like, wow, that's like that dark side of the coin, right? Where he's just like, has to keep coming to this, seeing this college, and he gets older every time, and he's not playing football for him. It's just this really kind of sad thing. And there's a point where it all accumulates to this bike race at the end, where the townies get to face off against the college kids, and it ends up being this kind of sports movie. But great movie. It's a lot more than a sports movie. It's a very good family drama, just drama in general about small town life, and it's good. It's really interesting. It doesn't have Blu-ray that's widely available. Twilight Time put it out. I just can't. I was just like, I could have swore. I was like, oh, I'll just link the Criterion. I'll buy it next sale or something. It's not a Criterion. This movie I could have swore. I'd have bet the house that it was a Criterion movie, because it feels like one, and it's a fantastic movie, highly recommended. I believe 1979. I think most people would dig this one. I think that it's a great movie, and one that I wish I was I'd seen a lot earlier. But yeah, great stuff. Great pick too on Patreon pick. I think it was Jim Simon. I think Jim Simon always picks pretty solid stuff. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. Nick from Flanders. Oh yes, that red planet called Mars. It still fascinates us, doesn't it? Still, I was never overly fond of either Mission to Mars or Red Planet, despite decent cast or directors. Give me Nigel Neal's interpretation any day of the week, and he had to use pretty shoddy special effects, and still his works have been released again, this time on UHD thanks to Hammer. Heck, I even prefer John Carpenter's Ghost of Mars, believe it or not. I do too. I like Ghost of Mars, which I shouldn't say. While the Guillermo del Toro's produced remake is handsome film indeed, I've come to prefer the original great that it's getting a re-release. I just might pick it up again. Maybe Ghost Keeper too. You seem to dig it, and concerning movies, Mrparka is never wrong. I am always wrong. Questions. Did you ever actually want to be an astronaut growing up? No. The idea of going to space was never appealing to me. Which is your favorite exploration of Mars movie? Doesn't have to be horror. I can't really think of one off the top of my head. There's so many of these horror movies I watch that I don't know what planet they're on. And I'm sure like one of the classic 50s sci-fi movies that I really like takes place on Mars. But I can't think of one where they're like exploring Mars for that. I mean, you have invaders from Mars, but they're not on Mars. So I really can't think of an exploration of Mars, and it's not a genre that, like, Red Planet's not a great movie, so I can't say that one. The zombie concept of Zedder looks very interesting, as does the premise of Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. Which do you prefer? Okay, so here's what it is. Zedder and Let Sleeping Corpses Lie. Zedder has a really great premise. And I love the movie. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie is one of my all-time favorite horror movies, let alone zombie movies in general. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, and the concept of how the zombies rise, and that one is great as well, but Let Sleeping Corpses Lie is more a traditional zombie film, right? They told Jorge Grau that we want Night of the Living Dead in color with more gore in 74, and that's what he made. And it's that great time of movie. It's a little early for that kind of nasty violence, right? That would be very prevalent in Spanish and Italian horror in the early 80s. And Let's Of Course Lie is a Spanish-Italian co-production. So even though Jorge Grau's Spanish, it is a co-production. But I would highly recommend Let's Save Corpses Lie. You'll love it. It's like one of the characters, the zombies had drowned. He's covered in water and he's got these red eyes. Just great, man. Great movie. We'll catch you next time, God willing, unless the dead rise and get us first. And they ain't getting me. I'll tell you that. I'm just kidding. What the Flick? I love Troma. One of my favorite movies is The Toxic Avenger. My first professional tattoo I got done was of Toxie. Nice. Love Toxie. Mike S.A.V. Suave. Another excellent Italian political film is La Scorza. I've never seen that. I've seen the cover. I've heard of it. I've never seen it. I'll have to seek that out. Ilk Vomit 88. I remember back in the day when the IFC channel used to show Terra Firma pretty much every day, sometimes back to back with Dead Alive. What a time to be alive. Pretty much. Actually, just rewatched the film about a week ago, after a good handful of years, and it still holds up. It's still hilarious and a lot of fun. This used to be a main film I would always throw on during house parties with all the homies. Some ganja and 40s of Miller High Life made it even more awesome. Yeah, I mean, Terra Firma is fucking amazing. It's a lot of fun if you got some demented horror friends. KNJHorror.com. Gotta love KNJHorror.com. That dude has one of the best VHS collections of all time. Terra Firma, a movie firmly based in reality. Of course. Doubt we ever see a remake of this bad boy. LOL. I don't think so. Way Up Dude. Hand pink waving facing. Yep, thank you. Beyond Sour Ground. 56020. I'll have to give Revenge of the Dead, aka Zetter, another chance. I only watched it a few years ago as the second part of a double feature with Murder Obsession, and kept falling asleep, then waking up and rewinding it. I hate when that happens. I knew the Revenge of the Dead art was misleading, so that wasn't a factor, as I was expecting it to be a slow burn. I do get your Fulci comparison, though, because Zetter also reminds me of films like Manhattan Baby or Black Cat. I got the Arrow release of House of Laughing Windows for Christmas, though, so I've been excited to watch that one. Yeah, House of Laughing Windows is more fast-paced, I'd say, but Zetter's great. Don't watch it with the double feature, and if you do, watch it first. Murder Obsession is also just mediocre to me. It's okay. The Ricardo Fredo movie's like the last film he directed, what, in like 81? Yeah. But yeah, it's not an amazing movie, but I think Zetter's better than Murder Obsession. Adam Watson, I love Romeo and Juliet the best. Why do you make that silly mouse noise at the end? It's because Poultrygeist. We used to do the thing from Poultrygeist with don't you even think about skipping on that soy gravy. So we'd put our arm on them like, we basically make a ghoulie sound. It's a ghoulie sound mixed with that, so that's why I do that. Done it forever. Ken Coakley, I didn't get a chance to see Jaws 3 theatrically because I didn't have a driver's license yet, so I had to wait to rent it. The film was nowhere near as good as Jaws 1 or 2. I did later rewatch it in 3D because I had a 3D setup, and I have to say that this one of the rare 3D films in which the 3D actually worked. A couple of other films that were amazing in 3D were Creature in Black Lagoon and Revenge of the Creature. Jaws 3 also had a good cast. Dennis Quaid did all this, as well as The Right Stuff, Dreamscape, and Enemy Mine, all within the span of a couple years. I also appreciated his Red Sox hat. The actress who played his girlfriend in the film was Bess Armstrong, who had a background in comedy. People who watch this confuse her with Frances McDormand. Okay, let's just do the Patreon picks first. Let's do 5 names out of the hat, or 4 or 5, whatever we do. We'll do 5. What we got? Amy D, Animal Factory. Did I cover Animal Factory? I don't think so. Am I thinking of the one with Edward Furlong? That's something else, isn't it? Now, what do we got here? We got Forgotten Scares 2016 doc, Nick Mua. That is the Flemish one. I'm pretty sure I did that one already, so we're going to toss that one out. If you keep, like, the same movie gets drawn out, we got David Scott, Byzantium. I'm almost positive I've done Byzantium. I'm going to put it to the side, but I'm pretty sure I did it already on the channel. A great movie, by the way. So I think I did that Byzantium. We got 2 here. We got Skip Barber, Salam, which is his independent movie he produced. And we got Ryan Cannon, Cream, Soda, and Milk. Okay. So we'll do one more just to be safe. And that is David Luton, Rope. Alfred Hitchcock. Love that. I love seeing that. But yeah, that is the Patreon picks. And let's do the update. We're just going to do it in here because I'm a lazy boy. But yeah, so first up is a 4K of Once a Thief, John Woo movie here. This is from the Scream Factory, their new label stuff here. The Hong Kong movies they've been putting out, so interesting stuff. Then we have Bay of Blood from Severn Films 4K, the deluxe edition. Very happy to have Bay of Blood, Mario Bava, absolute classic. Yeah, it has a bunch of stuff in here. Super happy to have that finally came. And then we have The Ghost, a Ricardo Ferreira movie. Never seen this one. Barbara Steele, I believe, is in this one as well. Yeah, Barbara Steele. I'm sure that's a great movie. And then last, but certainly not least from Severn Films, we have Adam and Eve from 1983. Looking forward to watching this trash. Mark Gregory in there. Yeah, I heard this is exploitation nonsense trash. Supposed to be wild and weird. And then Grove had this sale. Free shipping and everything. So I was like, I'd grab from Scream Factory, The Ghost and the Darkness. A movie that me and my family used to watch a lot. Enjoyed it. 96. Got Val Kilmer in here and Michael Douglas. But yeah, based on a true story about man-eating lions. So you know it's good. But yeah, guys, let's get out of here. Alright, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.